Welcome to This Week in Northwest Georgia Football, brought to you by Riverside Auto Group and produced by WLAQ Sports. Each week, we bring you insight, analysis, interviews, and our predictions for the week's matchups around the Northwest Georgia area. Here are your hosts.
Welcome in, everybody. It's time for another edition of This Week in Northwest Georgia Football. We're so glad that you've chosen to spend some time with us today, because we're going to do one of our favorite things in the world, Ian, and that is to sit down and talk about the upcoming weekend's high school football matchups, and there's some good ones coming up this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Some marquee matchups. We're steadily into region play now, so all these games have playoff implications. We got some rivalry games. We've got games that matter, and we can't wait to talk about them.
Absolutely. But the first thing that we're going to do is talk about last week's results, because, again, this week, thankfully, for my sake, it's kind of an enjoyable topic because, well, I've got the lead, and I got to enjoy it while I can, because I've had a lot of situations in our football picks over the last few years where that was not the case very often. Right. So it's not that I'm trying to rub in the fact that I have the lead. I'm just trying to relish it because I've been on the other end of that for a while. So certainly not picking on you, but definitely enjoying having a lead.
What are the records? I have to know. I know I'm in dead last. But
so last week I went 7-1. You and Grayson both were 6-2, and the one that we all missed was the Gordon Central versus Coosa game. And they didn't only win that game, Ian. They dominated.
Yeah, very impressive effort there. Was definitely surprised when I saw the final score in that ball game. I thought that would be a competitive matchup, but shut out were the Coosa Eagles, 30-0. Gordon Central got the W. So we missed that one, and then Grayson and I both took the Pepperell Dragons to beat the Temple Tigers. That did not happen. Game was close early, and then it got away from them late. The Dragons dropping that one 49-28.
And I should also mention that typically we do have a three-man group in here, a trio. I'm Matt Davis. Along with me is Ian Griffin. Typically, we'd also announce that Grayson Atkins is with us, but since school is out, and this is an internship that's tied to school and that kind of thing, he couldn't be here today, but he'll be back with us for next week's show. So, Grayson, if you're out there watching, we miss you today, and we'll certainly do our best to relay your information in terms of your picks today, and we'll get you back in here next week.
Yeah, stay safe. It's wet and nasty out there.
So we mentioned Gordon Central coming up with that big victory. I guess this would be a good place to kind of talk about some storylines that we've seen throughout the season before we jump into our slate of games. And that's certainly one of them, because Gordon Central going into this year, where they lost, I think, 31 games in a row. And so far this season, they've already picked up a few wins, and that one being a decisive one. That is definitely one of the teams that would be in running for most improved team this year, for sure.
Yeah, I think we kind of felt the same way about Coosa going into that matchup. So, again, a surprise that game was as lopsided as it was. But, Gordon Central finding their footing, having a solid season. On the other side, some other teams that have been interesting to follow this year. Look at the Chattooga Indians. This is a team that struggled last year, but has again rebuilt and gotten older, and they've got a workhorse in Zayden Cook at running back, and they're undefeated as they head into a big matchup this weekend. The Cedartown Bulldogs continue to roll. Big win over Cass last week. Another storyline there is that, Brody McQuarter out for the season, Cass's quarterback, and that really changes the dynamic of their offense, obviously, as they weren't able to get on the board last week. I think that's a different ball game if they have their leader at quarterback, but he's out, so Cass has to adjust. Cedartown now one of the front runners in that region. We saw the Rome Wolves get another impressive victory, 59-0 over Alexander last week. Of course, the story of their season was very strange because you had the bus wreck that caused them to have to cancel their Corky Kell matchup. Then they start off against two powerhouse programs. They're 0-2, and everybody's wondering what's wrong over at Rome High School. Well, nothing is wrong. They're in region play, and it's back to business. They've found their footing and are playing really, really well. Some of the other games that stood out last week, Fannin County continues to roll. The Darlington Tigers won their third straight game after an 0-2 start, and they got off to a 1-0 record in region play as they head into a rivalry matchup. And then it was a lot of lopsided scores last week. Model getting shut out on the road against a really tough Bremen team that we're going to get to see later later this season. So
and another team that lost their quarterback early in the season, and look where they are, still one of the most competitive teams around Northwest Georgia.
Indeed, they are. The Rockmart Yellow Jackets, another one of those stories where they had a brutal non-region schedule, but it's business as usual for them now as they get into region play and they continue to win big. In a game that we're going to talk about later today, we'd be remiss to not talk about the Adairsville Tigers. They've had a great season as well. They have a loss to Cass. That was when Cass had their starting quarterback, of course. That's their only loss of the season, and they have a chance. It's a prove-it situation here to go on the road and play a program like Calhoun. So that's a game I can't wait to see how that one turns out.
Well, going back to the picks challenge that we do here, here's the overall record. I'm on top, 43-9. Grayson is in second place, 42-10, and Ian, you're not too far off the pace, 40-12 right now. So a lot of football left. For most teams, I guess you're right at the halfway point.
Yeah.
Some teams, I guess you're a little over halfway or whatever, depending on how the bye weeks and everything would shake out. But we got a lot of football left and a lot of very interesting matchups now that we're in region play, and I'm super excited about talking about these games. We got a full slate coming up this weekend. Obviously, one of the elephants in the room is, without a doubt, whatever weather could have to do with some of these matchups. I do believe that looking at most of the weather forecast, though, it looks like most of the bad weather is going to be out of here by the time the Friday night lights shine in our general area. So I guess it just kind of depends on what kind of power outage situations you have, any kind of damage, all those sorts of things. But the main thing is obviously we just hope everybody's safe throughout this situation. And a lot of the news channels talk about what an unprecedented event it could be. So we'll see.
Right. And I'm no meteorologist, but from what I'm looking at here, if we have some high winds, then there's a chance for some trees and limbs to go down that could cause power outages. But it seems like most of the real nasty stuff is going to sweep south of us and hit Atlanta. We're going to get a lot of precipitation, but hopefully none of the lightning and high winds will affect us. And the way I'm looking at it right now, from all the messaging that we're getting from all the school systems around here, is it's open and they're going to let us know tomorrow. So hopefully it's just a wet night and we can wake up tomorrow and look forward to some Friday Night Lights.
No question. I would imagine, most programs out there certainly want to proceed as planned and not have schedules change and all that kind of stuff, because it's not just about when the game gets shifted to, it's how it shifts around the rest of the stuff and all those kind of things. It kind of can be quite a big challenge to deal with.
Well, routine's important to these coaches,
Yeah.
And a lot of them want to be at home to watch Alabama and Georgia at 7:30 on Saturday too.
There it is. There it is. Nobody wants to miss that opportunity on Saturdays. Fridays is for high school football. Saturdays are for college football this time of year.
Yes,
no
indeed.
question about that. But there already is, on that note, one game that's been shifted to Saturday, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. That's going to be the Tryon Bulldogs are going to Manchester to take on the Blue Devils. That'll be a pretty interesting matchup, to say the least, and that's going to be a Saturday 3 o'clock game. So that's the only one I've seen so far out of the games that we're going to be talking about today that's been moved. But if anybody out there is watching and we start talking about a game as if it's going to be Friday and you know something else, in the comments, let us know. We've tried to do as much research as we can, but I know that information starts happening fast when you're in these situations.
Well, in that particular game, Manchester is a little further towards the middle of the state, so that makes sense because the worst of this weather is headed in that direction.
Here's our slate of games we're going to talk about this week. We are going to start in 7AD1 when we come back from the break, and we're going to talk about the Dade County Wolverines going out to H.A. Lindsay and taking on the Almerchi Indians. Also, two teams playing some really good football right now. We'll talk about Gordon Central Warriors at Fanning County Rebels. Then we've got Christian Heritage going out to Coosa, playing on Branch Bragg Field against the Eagles. The Chattooga Indians, 5-0, taking on a really good team. This may be their toughest test so far, taking on the Gordon Lee Trojans on the road. Looking forward to chatting about that one. A little bit later on in the show, we'll go into Georgia Association of Private and Parochial Schools, AA Region 1, 9-man football. That's a mouthful. But we're going to talk about the Unity Christian School Lions going over to LaGrange, Georgia, which is where Lafayette Christian Cougars are located. I would have thought it was somewhere else, maybe
Right.
Lafayette.
Yeah,
it's in
possibly.
LaGrange. And then we're going to move into 7AD2. We mentioned a Saturday game. It's the Tryon Bulldogs at Manchester Blue Devils. Big matchup there. And 7AA at Sonoraville at Rockmart. And 7AAA, we'll talk about Adairsville at Calhoun. You referenced that Adairsville team just a little bit ago, so that one's certainly on the list to talk about today. And then we've got Bremen at Temple and Region 6A D1. And our game of the weekend. Tell us a little bit about the conversations we have.
Yeah. We will hear from both head coaches of the Pepperell Dragons, Brandon Haywood, and the Darlington Tigers, Wayne Groves, a little later in the show, as they were kind enough to take a little time to chat with us about this matchup, what it means, how they're preparing, and their view of their opponent on Friday night. But it's a huge game. It's a region game. It's a rivalry game. There's a lot on the line, and those two teams are going to come out ready to play.
No doubt. And it was great to catch up with both of those guys. And I really loved all the different things that they had to say about that rivalry matchup. And I felt like we got, we covered a lot and got a lot of great information from those guys. So looking forward to the audience getting to listen in with those conversations with us in just a little bit.
Yeah, it's going to be great. We enjoyed having them on the show.
All right. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to start picking them and let you know how we see them in just a few moments. This is This Week in Northwest Georgia Football on the WLAQ YouTube channel and Facebook live feed. Thanks for being here. And in the comments, as we pick the games, you pick them with us. We want to hear what your take is. You may think we're total idiots, and that's okay. Just let us know what you think about these matchups. So we will be right back in just a couple of moments.
Shop for your next car, truck, or SUV at Riverside Auto Group. Check out riversideautogroup.com today to browse their selection or visit with them in person at Riverside Chevrolet GMC in Rome, Riverside Toyota in Rome, and the all-new Riverside GMC Cadillac in Cartersville. Locally owned and operated by the Welburn family since 1974. That's Riverside Auto Group. Visit riversideautogroup.com.
All right, WLA crew, we're glad you're with us, and we are back on This Week in Northwest Georgia Football. It's time to jump into the picks, and we're going to start in 7A Division I, and the first game on our list is the Dade County Wolverines going to Armuchee to play the Indians. Look, these two teams are very familiar with each other. We called a classic between these two in a region play-in game years and years ago when Mullinax was still coaching the Indians. Look, Eric Blue's done a fantastic job. Armuchee has found ways to win. They're a scrappy team that's going to fight you hard for 4 quarters. Dade County, you look at the record and you might say, okay, Armuchee's going to win this one, but Dade County has played a brutal schedule. They have hung tough with some really good opponents, namely Tryon and Ringgold, that jump out to me. I just think at this point, from a depth perspective especially, I think that Dade County has an advantage over Armuchee in that as this game wears on, I do think the Wolverines will pull away and win.
Yeah, I agree with you on this one. I definitely think this is one of those situations where the record can be deceiving going into this one, because when you look at Armuchee, the first few games they played, Ridgeland, Cherokee Christian, GAPPS, and Southeast Whitfield, a combined 0-15. So those were going to be very winnable games for Armuchee, which I think is a good thing, because obviously
took care of business.
When you're trying to get things going, you're trying to build confidence in your team and things of that nature. But as applies to this situation, it's not apples to apples when you look at that strength of schedule. And when you look at Dade County, over the years, we've seen them be a very physical type of football team. They're very sound fundamentally. They ran into a buzzsaw last week hosting Fannin County. Armuchee comes into the game, I think, a bit banged up after getting knocked around pretty hard, from what I understand, by that Chattooga team, which obviously you talk about Zayden Cook with that team. I was talking to one of the parents from Armuchee the other day, and they were talking about how physical that team was in that game. So I think this is going to be another tough physical type game, and maybe that takes its toll on the Indians as the game goes on. So the point is, they're going to have to try to match that physicality of Dade County. You can't turn the ball over. You can't have penalties, make mistakes, things of that nature. They've got to play their best game, I think, to have a shot in this game. So I think Dade County's going to win. But we'll see. Hopefully, Armuchee can put up a significant fight and prove us wrong in that one. We're going to see. So.
Excellent. Well, I have to speak up for our absent host,
yes.
and Grayson Atkins. He's taken Dade as well.
Okay, so we agree on the first one. The next one on the list is going to be an exciting one. Gordon Central Warriors 3-2 to start the season, and then they're going up to Fannin County to take on the Rebels, who are 5-0, 2-0. And one of the things that we've seen a lot with this Fannin County team is just how explosive that they can be. Ever since we've been following this team when they've been in one of our regions that we cover here locally. And so Fannin beat Dade County 44-0. And Dade County, we just talked about what a good football team they are. So I think that tells you where this Fannin County team is. They can run the football. They had 335 yards with a 100-yard rushing effort there from Carson Callahan. Also, Lawson Sullivan had 139 yards. Callahan had 154. This is from the Georgia High School Football Daily, of course. And both ran for a couple of touchdowns. I mean, this is a team that's coming at you, and I think even though this Gordon Central team is definitely much improved, I don't think they're on the level of the number 4 team in the state out of this classification, the Fannin County Rebels. So I think it's going to be kind of one of those coming back to earth kind of situations. They'll put up a great fight. Coach Gregory's doing a great job with this group, but I think this is going to be one of those situations where they just run into a buzzsaw. Do you see it the same?
I do. I think Gordon Central's putting themselves in a position to possibly be a playoff team here, but going on the road to play Fannin County, and this is a Fannin County team that had a ton of success when they first burst onto our radar when they landed in Region 7 AA and dominated, and now as they're in 7A D1, I mean. Last year, they kind of took a step back. I think they lost some of that upperclassmen leadership that they had, but now those guys are a year older with that experience. They run an air raid style offense, but that doesn't mean they don't like to run the ball. As you noted, they had 2 backs that had explosive outings last week. So I think Gordon Central deserves a lot of credit for what they've done thus far, but this game is not going their way. They're going to have a hard time on the road against Fannin.
All right, so we agree. And how did Grayson see this one?
Yeah, Grayson agrees with us. Okay. He just says essentially that the Rebels are a buzzsaw.
All right.
Yeah.
So there you have it. Next game on the list. Tell us a little bit about that one, man.
Yeah, so we've got Christian Heritage traveling to play Coosa. Last week, certainly surprised when I started flipping through the scores to see the outcome of the Coosa game against Gordon Central last week. Thought that game would go down to the wire. It did not, but I think this Coosa team has some talent, especially at the quarterback position. Listening to Tony Potts, who's the voice of the Warriors, he called in to the scoreboard show last week, and he said the turnovers kind of killed Coosa, but the arm talent of the quarterback was on display, and that Coosa was taking some steps forward. Christian Heritage has won 4 straight. They beat the Pepperell Dragons a few weeks ago. I think Coosa keeps this one competitive, but at the end of the day, I've got to go with Christian Heritage to get the win.
And you mentioned the improvement of this Christian Heritage team. You got to remember who their head coach is. It's Frank Barden, who's now in his 2nd season with the Lions. Came over from St. Francis, where he got that program turned around really quickly. Most people around these parts remember his days at Cartersville, where he won a state championship. So the man knows how to coach a football team, and he's got talent to work with at a school like Christian Heritage. Of course, the main guy that you're going to hear about is Carter Triplett, who's a dual threat quarterback. He's a big kid. We saw him play last year. Obviously, he's gotten better, and he's got some supporting cast around him. So I think that this Christian Heritage team is going to be a lot to handle for the Coosa Eagles. You mentioned some exciting players, including the quarterback over at Coosa, running back Joshua Turner. Jai Turner, also Harrison East. We always talk about him. Yeah. They've got some good players, so they're going to put up a fight. But at the end of the day, I think Carter Triplett and this Christian Heritage team are going to prove to be a little bit too much. But we'll see what happens. I think Coosa Eagles, a lot more excitement with that program. We talk about Coach Cannon and his energy and positivity and ability to coach a football team. So maybe Coosa can, come out and maybe surprise a few people in this one. But I think the safer pick right now for me is going to be Christian Heritage.
And Grayson sees it the same way. So thus far, we are all in line.
So no differences in this one so far. We'll move on to our next game, and that is going to be the Chattooga Indians going to Gordon Lee to take on the Trojans. And this is one of those matchups that was kind of fun to do some research on. But the Chattooga Indians 5-0 on the season, 2-0 in region play. Gordon Lee, they are 3-2, 1-1. Chattooga leads the series 3-0. They played in 1961 and then 2014 and 2015. And so that was one of the things in the research that kind of surprised me with the close proximity that you had geographically for these teams. they haven't played it at least a few more times.
Right,
you know?
right. 3 times in their history. That's pretty shocking.
But obviously, you talked about Zayden Cook, had another stellar game, 268 yards and 4 touchdowns on only 15 carries in their victory over Almerchi. Can you stop him? That remains the question, and nobody's been able to be able to do that yet.
Yeah, yeah. I think Gordon Lee has the best shot of anyone Chattooga has played so far. I think they're pretty strong on the line of scrimmage. You know what's coming. But, we talk a lot about Zayden Cook, but I think you did a great service to these Indians. Zayden Cook, I don't care how good of a running back you are, if the guys aren't getting a push up front, it's going to be tough sledding. So, obviously, this Chattooga team has got some big nasties that are doing their job to create those running lanes and that space for Zayden Cook to be on a record-breaking, streak here with the yards and touchdowns that he is piling up week in, week out. I think Gordon Lee's going to put up a fight here. It's on the road, but I think this Chattooga team, you may know what's coming, but can you stop it? I don't think Gordon Lee can. I think Chattooga keeps rolling in this one. I think they wear them down. Maybe it's close for a half, but I like Chattooga and that running game to pull away and win by 2 or 3 scores.
We have an identical view in this game. I'm going to take Chattooga as well. I think Gordon Lee is going to get out and try to match their physicality. They've got some good skill guys. Had a guy that rushed for 200 yards last week, and a couple of touchdowns, and Peyton Gross. But I just don't think that even though they're going to put on a great effort, that it's going to be enough. I don't think they're going to get Chattooga in this one, and Chattooga's going to go 6-0 to start the season.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have seen that coming. To be
impressive. Yeah, absolutely.
What a great turnaround for that program.
Yeah, Rune Gable's got it going. He sure does. And once again, the young buck. He sees it like we do. He's taking Chattooga.
All righty. Well, let's see. Let's pick one more game.
Okay.
And then we'll take a break and come back. But we've got a lot more stuff coming on, and we've got our first comment here on our Facebook live feed, and it's from Kelly Fountain. And I would imagine you probably could guess what the comment is.
Something about Rambo.
Something about Rambo.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
Of course, you made a reference to that. I hope, Kelly, that you watched the live stream for Darlington this past week, because Ian found an opportune time, and you can describe that if you'd like to.
Yeah.
To work that into the play-by-play.
It was a crucial moment in the game. It was 4th and short, and I just referenced that knowing Wayne Groves like we've gotten to know him, that he's about to put on the red headband, throw on the ammo straps, and go for it, John J. Rambo style. So, he indeed did. So yeah, we've gotten to know Coach Groves pretty well.
And he's responded, "I heard it," and then he said, "Red headband."
Excellent.
So thanks for chiming in, Kelly. We appreciate you. Glad you're out there watching and listening today. Well, the next game that we're going to talk about is in the Georgia Association of Private and Parochial Schools region. Was it 1 or 2? I don't know. 9-man. I got it mixed up. I wrote it down different ways in different places.
Okay.
But, it's been an interesting situation here for the Unity Christian Lions this year, because they've had 2 games that they didn't get to play. One of them was because one of the schools didn't have a football team as they originally scheduled to have. And then I think the previous one last week didn't have enough players to play the game. So you see that happen in this league sometimes, and I know it's got to be frustrating because these guys have been working super hard to get ready for the season, and then you get ready for the games, which is super exciting for them, and then boom, you have 2 situations, there in the first half of the year where you don't get to play. So I feel for those kids and coaches after all the hard work they put in. But it looks like this one's going to happen. Lafayette Christian Cougars and LaGrange, they're 4-1, really good football team. Unity's a good football team. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, I think it's the toughest test that the Lions will have faced this season. And you mentioned it, the stop and start aspect of this season, which has been completely out of Unity's control. It has to factor into your schedule and staying on routine. That said, the Lions are in good hands with Coach Humphreys. I think that he will have them focused. And they understand they're going up against a tough opponent here whose only losses to an undefeated squad. This one's going to be a barn burner, but I'm going to go with the defending state champs to keep on the winning track here. I'm taking Unity to win.
How does Grayson see it?
Grayson is also taking Unity.
All right. I'm going to take Unity as well. One of the things that I like about this squad from the things I've read in the newspaper, talking to Coach Humphreys, talking to their athletic director, Russ Dyer, over at Unity is, look, they were trying to play against an 11-man GHSA team last week and couldn't get it on the schedule. That's how bad these kids want to get out there and play football. So there's no shortage of motivation and drive in this team, and they're going to be ready to go. They are chomping at the bit to get out there, so there's no way that I'm picking against the Roaring Lions. They're going to get it done. So we'll see, but we're picking the same through these.
Yeah, so far we're all in line.
Yes, yeah. And I kind of like that because
it means you're maintaining your lead at this point. But we'll see how this goes on the back half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and take another break. We've still got several games to talk about. Tryon at Manchester, matchup of two top 10 teams, Sonoraville at Rockmart, Adairsville at Calhoun, Bremen at Temple, and Pepperell at Darlington. And we're about halfway through, so we gotta burn through some of these. But we'll go ahead and take a break. We'll come back. We'll have more. This is This Week in Northwest Georgia Football. We're glad that you've chosen to spend some time with us. We'll be back.
Shop for your next car, truck, or SUV at Riverside Auto Group. Check out riversideautogroup.com today to browse their selection or visit with them in person at Riverside Chevrolet GMC in Rome, Riverside Toyota in Rome, and the all-new Riverside GMC Cadillac in Cartersville. Locally owned and operated by the Welburn family since 1974. That's Riverside Auto Group. Visit riversideautogroup.com.
Okay, we welcome you back into this episode of This Week in Northwest Georgia Football as the season continues to clip by at just an unbelievable pace. It's week 7, picking games for you, and we do want to let you know that coming up on Friday night, we got coverage for you of Darlington football. We'll start with the radio edition of this program at 5:45. At 6:45 on Friday, it's the Coach Grove Show radio edition. At 7:15, Darlington pregame from Chris Hunter Stadium. 7:30 kickoff as the Darlington Tigers host the Pepperell Dragons that we've also selected as our game of the week on this show. So interviews with the coaches coming up later. And at the end of the night's action, Ian, we've got the Rome Orthopedic Center High School Football Scoreboard Show with Lynn and Austin and you, the listener to the program. So we always want to encourage people to write down the number 706-232-7767. Again, 706-232-7767. Give those guys a call, no matter what game you're at, because we'd love it if we had different people that attend the games in each community, whether it's Almerchi, Coosa, Darlington, Pepperell, Rome, Unity, Gordon Central, Chattooga, Dade, Tryon, whichever game you're at, Cedartown, Rockmart, Calhoun, Cartersville, running through the whole list there. We'd love for you to call in and tell us what happened in the games. I know Lynn and Austin really love hearing from you.
Yeah. Nobody can tell us better than somebody who put their eyes on it. And the calls were great last week, so we encourage you to keep calling in. Talk to the Butler boys. Give them your perspective on the games that you took in on Friday nights. That's what that show is all about.
All right, Ian, since the camera's on you, man, tee us up for this next matchup.
All right, this is a big one. This is a big region game here for the Tryon Bulldogs, who are undefeated. They had a close one last week, only won by 7 points in a real dogfight. And now they travel to take on a really good Manchester Blue Devils team. This Manchester team has only given up 22 points all season. I think it's going to be a low-scoring slobber knocker of a game. There is a player of note on this Manchester squad, and that is a guy by the name of Justice Terry. He's a 5-star recruit. He was supposed to visit Alabama on Saturday, but this game got moved to Saturday. So instead of going and watching the Tide play the Dogs in Tuscaloosa, he'll be playing for the Blue Devils in a big region matchup. I'm not sure which way this one goes. The defense of Manchester has me leaning in that direction, but I'm going to believe in the senior leadership of this Tryon team. I think Cade Smith finds a way to make enough plays for trying to escape with a win, but this is going to be a really, really tough ball game.
This was the toughest one of the week to pick, without a doubt, because I definitely think that Tryon, number 8 team in the state, out of this classification, 6-0, has all the confidence and talent to win this game. But on the other side, with Manchester, the number 3 team, 4-0 to start the season, You look at their ability to run the football against Chapel Hill, shutting them out 38-0, had 350 yards. Darius Favors had almost 100. Quavion Cooper had 75. Benji Kempson had 70. Obviously, they're getting a push up front, to your point, talking about Chattooga earlier in the show. So I think there's just a lot of different things that it appears that this Manchester team is able to do. They get this at home. They get it at an odd time. So for those reasons, I'm going to take Manchester to win the game. But I was stressed picking this game. I could see it going either way. But I'm going to take the home team in this one.
Well, Grayson agrees with you.
Really?
Yes, he does. He has the Manchester Blue Devils circled. So the only way I'm going to catch up with you guys is to have some differences.
That's right. That's right.
I need you, Bulldogs. If you're out there listening, Coach Patrick, get them ready, baby. Go on the road and get this win for me.
Do it for Ian.
Do it for Ian.
Do it for Ian.
Yeah.
All right, we'll move on to the next one, and I'll tee this one up for us. This is going to be the Sonoraville Phoenix going on the road to take on the number 7 team in the state in AA, Rockmart Yellow Jackets. A 7AA matchup here. Series is tied 2-2. Rockmart's won the last 2 handedly, though, and Rockmart beat Coahulla Creek 35-7 last week. Hagen Sharp was 14 of 19 passing for 154 yards, a couple touchdowns. And that's according to the Georgia High School Football Daily. Boy, what a great resource that is. If you're a high school football fan and you hadn't latched onto that yet and had it in your inbox every day, you're missing out. You need to check it out. It just keeps getting better and better. Look at it every single day. So I'd like to tip my cap to those guys for helping us do our research because it's all over the state where they pick up their information from. It's awesome.
Impressive.
Yeah. Truly is. Credit where credit's due. When you look at this Rockmart team, Ian, it's interesting to look at the progression of their numbers because they've scored more each game than the last. And for the most part, it's the same on the defensive side of the ball. And it's because when you look at that schedule, they were so top heavy in some of those teams that they played. They scrimmaged Rome before the season started, had to play Cedartown. They had so much tough stuff that they were facing. And now that they're in region play, they're ready. And I think that was a team that was kind of looking for an identity early on, and they're starting to really see that come to fruition. So I think that's going to cause some problems here for Sonoraville in this game. I think they're a talented team. They've got some playmakers, but at the end of the day, I think Rockmart's going to prove to continue to be too much.
Yeah. We talked with Coach Parson at the beginning of the season, and they had a lot of youth at the skill positions that were coming up and having to step in, and they had to go through a baptism by fire playing some of the best programs in the state to start the season. We've gotten real accustomed to Rockmart just hanging 70 on just about everybody. The points haven't been as plentiful this season, but they're starting to find their footing. Sonoraville is a good program. Coach Pate's going to have them ready to play, but I think each week we're going to see these numbers continue to improve for Rockmart, and I think it'll be no different this week.
All right, so you agree with that?
I certainly do.
What about the Young Bucks?
Young Bucks with us. He's taking Rockmart.
All right, so let's move on to the next one. You want to tee this one up for us?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a monumental game, in my opinion, because you've had the Adairsville Tigers who are off to a great start with only one loss, that one coming against a juggernaut of a Cass team back when they were at full strength, of course. And then you've got the Calhoun Yellow Jackets who, you look at the record and people are like, what's going on with Calhoun? Well, they're still Calhoun. They played an absolutely meat grinder of a non-region schedule as they usually do. And they want to get the wins, but those experiences are going to help them as they step into region play. Adairsville has tons of guys at the skill positions that can make things tricky here. And if things go their way, Calhoun had a bit of the turnover bug. We talked to Coach Stevenson, and he mentioned that going into their big matchup with Carterville. We put the ball on the turf too much, and that happens to teams. It's just kind of something that'll plague you certain seasons. If that is the case, that's Adairsville's opportunity, and if they can get up early, maybe they can make this a 4-quarter game and have a chance to win. I'm not going to pick that to happen. I think Calhoun plays their best game. They understand what's on the line here. I think Adairsville is their top contender to give them a run for their money in this region, but I think Calhoun rises to that occasion and wins this one by a couple of scores.
Does Grayson agree with you?
I am looking, and he does.
He does.
He does.
Well, guess what? It's unanimous because I'm going to take Calhoun in this game. You mentioned the tough schedule: Creekview, Westminster, Cartersville, Cambridge. That gets you guys ready and prepared after a tough non-region slate like that. Adairsville did play Cass, but otherwise, Their strength of schedule didn't come close in those non-region games, Alatoona, Pepperell, Woodland. But they're a good team top to bottom. I've kind of viewed Adairsville in recent years as kind of being that picture of consistency in all three phases of the game. So if they come out and play mistake-free, don't turn the ball over, all those sorts of things, and can force Calhoun to make a couple of mistakes or something like that, maybe there's a little bit of daylight there. But I still think that this Calhoun program right now, even though they're 1-3, haven't played a region game yet, they're still ranked number 9 in the top 10. And that's because they still have a tremendous amount of talent, and everybody that comes up with those polls, however that works, I'm not even sure how it goes. They know.
Yeah, they understand
talent. They understand that. So, and certainly the coaching staff, Coach Cudd and his staff knows what they're up against.
Sure.
They're going to be ready. But at the end of the day, I think Calhoun again proves to be too much. They lead the series 21-9. Calhoun does. They've won the last 15 in the series. So. Just a great, consistent winning football program.
If Adairsville can pull off this upset, it will be a seismic shift there. That's be huge, and I think they'll give it their best shot.
Looking forward to seeing the outcome of this one and hearing the storylines on that. So one more we'll pick, then we'll take a break, and we'll talk about that game of the week and the interviews that we have for you a little bit later. This one's the Bremen Blue Devils going over to Temple. This is certainly one of those games that's got a lot of intrigue, doesn't it?
Yeah, big one in the region is both these teams kind of have established themselves as front runners for, bringing home that region championship. Now Darlington and Heard County will certainly have something to say about that, along with the Pepperell Dragons as they look to bounce back this week. Last week, Temple racked up 377 rushing yards against the Pepperell Dragons. They lean on that running attack. They get this game at home. I think the goal here will be to play ball control offense. We mentioned Bremen losing their starting quarterback, but they've been able to find their identity, pounding the rock on offense as well, and leaning on an elite defense. That's the difference maker here. This one being at home for Temple, I think it's close, but I think Bremen and that defense find a way to get enough stops to get a win and put themselves as a front runner to win the championship this region.
Does Grayson see it the same way?
He does.
He does.
Yes.
Okay. Well, guess what? I do too. The only thing I'll add to that, series history-wise, Bremen leads at 19-2. However, the last two have been decided by 2 points or less, so a 2-point game, a 1-point game. They haven't played the last 3 seasons. And one of the things to keep in mind, you talked about that Bremen defense. If this ends up being kind of a defensive game, they keep it close, those sorts of things. They've got a kicker, apparently, on that team. I was looking at the Georgia High School Football Daily, and Carter Allen, their place kicker, was 3 of 3 on field goals, had a 52-yarder. It's been a while since I've been calling a high school football game and saw somebody swing and knock a 52.
Oh, Brenton Sumner, maybe. We watched him hit some long ones.
There was a kid out of Murchie 10 or so years. How long ago was that? 10 or 12 years ago.
So.
That we used to call Chief Thunderfoot.
Yeah.
And I have to think of his name. Was it Tommy Harris or
maybe
I think
so.
It was. I want to say it was that could kick him from that distance. But
and then maybe Adam Griffith that was at Calhoun. He was a lot of fun to watch as well.
So that's always awesome when you see a guy that can do that.
Yeah, that's a weapon that most high school teams don't have at their disposal. So, I just think Bremen's going to be too much in this one, and I think you and Grayson feel the same way.
Definitely. So, well, let's see. We've had one difference, and that was Manchester and Tryon.
And I'm on a limb.
Yeah. Well,
that's where I need to be.
I don't think it's a bad pick. I can see that one going either way. So we'll see. Well, that's pretty much all the games we're going to pick, but we got one more to talk about. So tell us what we got coming up after the break.
Yeah, when we come back, after we hear a word from our sponsor, you will hear from the coaches of both the Darlington Tigers and Pepperell Dragons. That's Wayne Groves, head football coach at Darlington, and Brandon Haywood, head coach of the Pepperell Dragons. So they're going to give us their insight in this big-time matchup, this rivalry, what it means, how they're preparing, and their perception of their opponents. So looking forward to their thoughts when we get back.
All right, we'll take that break that Ian just referenced. We're back with more on this Week 7 edition of This Week in Northwest Georgia Football.
Shop for your next car, truck, or SUV at Riverside Auto Group. Check out riversideautogroup.com today to browse their selection or visit with them in person at Riverside Chevrolet GMC in Rome, Riverside Toyota in Rome, and the all-new Riverside GMC Cadillac in Cartersville. Locally owned and operated by the Welburn family since 1974. That's Riverside Auto Group. Visit riversideautogroup.com.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to This Week in Northwest Georgia Football. We are on the line with the head football coach of the Pepperell Dragons, Brandon Haywood. Coach, thanks for taking some time to talk with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you all for the invite. I appreciate it.
Well, it's a big matchup on Friday night over at Chris Hunter Stadium, and we just appreciate you taking the time to talk with us again. This is your first year at Pepperell. You've spent a lot of time with some different programs around the area, but Matt and I and our listeners would just like to know, after being at the helm now for several months, what are your impressions of this Pepperell Dragons community, the environment of the school, and the impact of the students, players, and faculties? What kind of impact have they made on you?
They've made a really big impact on me. It's still everything that I imagined about, taking over the helm and just, leading the Dragons and what type of community, what type of school, what type of administration, the stakeholders that's in place in the community of Rome and Lindale. Like, everything's still the same that I thought. The expectations have probably been exceeded. I knew taking this job how important it was the sport of football to this community and this place. And that hadn't changed, I hate the fact that we hadn't got off to the start that many, including myself, had anticipated. I knew we had a long road ahead of us based on the non-region schedule that we had. But I'm ready for my kids to see some results on the scoreboard. We get results every week to where we do, I feel like, improve in a lot of different areas. But they need to see the results on the scoreboard that reflects all the time, the commitment, the dedication and work that they've invested and put in. So I'm ready for them to see that, to, kind of start that sense of confidence that's needed as we hit this 5-game span. But so far, everything that I imagined heading into this job, that it hadn't been anything sly of the expectations that I knew that were in place before I said yes.
Got Coach Haywood with us, Pepperell Dragons. Of course, Coach, your team's been playing hard, lots of close finishes. You mentioned the tough non-region schedule that you had in front of you going into the year. Haven't been able to notch that first win yet, but, again, a lot of close finishes. You mentioned the adversity that your teams face, a lot of coachable moments in those times of adversity. So the question is, when you have a situation like this, how do you and your coaching staff help motivate each other and then also the players to keep getting better and stay focused day in and day out in this type of situation?
I think it's important for us because, kids are kids. Kids go through, mental phases, psychological phases, just like we as adults do. But I think it might be harder for them just because we live in the normalcy of social media. So what they see is, a lot of what they believe. So I think it's important for us as a coaching staff as we continue to meet. I think Coach Saban, he said, and it was followed by Coach Belichick, but Coach Saban had preached down on, when you're winning, it's important to make sure you stay on your kids, stay on top of them, because we cannot create any relaxation in the program. We got to make sure we stay on our P's and Q's when we are winning, just so we don't take a step back and create any type of complacency in the program. I think when you're losing, it's completely opposite. I think you have to be extremely encouraging to your kids and motivating to your kids to give them some reason to want to be there. Because, you can't compound a negative with a negative. In this situation, it's not going to be a negative. Negative creates a positive. It's you're already physically losing. We don't need to come in and, degrade you or make you feel any less than to make you, start questioning mental losses as well. And then, you have a hard time of wanting to come to practice, wanting to, perform at the best of your ability. So I think it's extremely important to continue as a coaching staff to encourage and motivate our kids. We still are big on the relationship building part to where we try to spend time with our kids in practice, outside of practice. We plan on doing some team stuff tomorrow just to, continue to be around each other and try to continue to inspire and encourage those kids to want to be a part of this program that we're trying to continually build.
Well, Coach, I would imagine a week like this, it's a little easier to motivate your kids. When you talk about this corner of Northwest Georgia, Darlington and Pepperell, two proud programs with a storied history, quite a rivalry game here. So I want to get your thoughts on the rivalry, your thoughts on what your perception of a Coach Groves-led program is and what they've got over there at Darlington, and then how you're preparing your team to go on the road. I know the Dragon Faithful will show up as well. It should be a heck of an environment on Friday night.
Absolutely. You really don't have to talk too much about this week. My kids, they seem like they have been locked in, even though last week I think was kind of a letdown on all of our behalves, everybody like within the program. I think it was, it's something that I feared and something that I hoped wouldn't happen. Not having any wins throughout our non-region schedule. As soon as something bad happened, I didn't want our team to kind of tank because they hadn't seen anything good. But I felt a sense of, I'm not going to say they quit, but it was a sense of, oh, man, we went down a touchdown and here we go. The body language changed, and I think it was the mentality of here we go again. And I don't want that, and I think it's hard because we hadn't created a sense of confidence yet. But this week I don't think that plays into the dividends of it. I think it's, mentally, I think our kids are really locked in. I think our coaches are locked in because this is such an important game. It has a lot of different implications in this game. It's one of the most, in my opinion, one of the biggest rivals, especially in this region of Northwest Georgia. So there's a lot of different implications that go in this game, personal, interpersonal, whatever the case may be. So our kids have been locked and loaded as well as our coaching staff. I think, Coach Groves, I ain't got anything bad to say about him. It's just it's a hard-led football team. They're coached extremely well. You can tell based on film. You can also tell based on with the limited number of kids they have. I know I have a couple of kids that average 115 snaps a game, which is a lot on any kid. But I know it's, roughly 30 kids over there. So he's dealing with the same thing. And they just continue to, dig deep, find a way. Like I said, extremely well coached. There's a couple of coaches on staff that I know personally, and I know what kind of coaches and what kind of men they are. So, we know exactly how it's going to be. We know exactly what, and they kind of show their hands at what they do. They're pretty simplistic in the approach. Is, we're going to line up this way and we're going to run it this way and we're going to do it this way. So it's not like they try to surprise you or trick you. It's just they're comfortable in the coaching style and putting kids in the place to be successful, and they just run with it. And, our kids, it's the same way. It's the kids that they grew up with, kids that they know, kids that are 10 minutes down the street. It really don't get any more personal than this. It's just, it's Darlington and Pepperell, and that's what people want to see, and that's the game. This game will be looked under extremely closely under a microscope glass. People have been waiting for this game probably for the whole season. Based on the way our kids are, prepared this week, even in chaos of Hurricane Helene, we still have done some things to where we have been mentally dialed in and prepared to try to be as successful as possible at the end of Friday night.
Well, Coach, let's talk about the nuts and bolts of your team. We'll do the same thing for Darlington as we get ready to wind down here in a couple of moments. But let's talk about some of your standout guys and leaders on your team that you're expecting big things from in this matchup and throughout the season.
Sam Ross is the kid that we've leaned on, our quarterback. Been playing a lot of defense lately as well, but that's just, one of those kids that's hard-nosed, that's gritty, that's going to fight until the whistle blows. Until that last second goes off the play clock. He is just that type of kid that you want to surround yourself with as a coach and somebody to lead your team. You got somebody like I brought these two in my office yesterday, Brian Rodriguez, which is our starting right guard, and Turner Crawford, which has been playing center for us. I'm sorry, probably our left guard, but these kids are just, they do everything very consistently. They're there all the time to do everything in the weight room that you ask them to. They're becoming that vocal type of leader that you want. That's what I've been craving. That's what our coaching staff has been craving, some peer leadership. You got Kel Edderburn that's still doing everything that you asked him to do. Effort is through the roof. Debo and Tucker. Sam Wooten has had a good week of practice, in preparation. I know what this may be like for him this week. But he's saying he's probably been more engaged this week and locked in this week than he had all season. So he's probably not letting the noise or distractions get to him, which is really, really good to see in a maturity level of a kid his age. So, just kind of still piggybacking off the same leaders. I think we're just all growing in different ways, but I think there's ways that will benefit our football team as we progress and move forward in this season.
We have Coach Brandon Haywood with us, head coach of the Pepperell Dragons, getting ready for a big rivalry matchup, and we've chosen it as the game of the week here on This Week in Northwest Georgia Football. We talked about your guys. Who are some of the standout guys here for this Darlington team that really catch your attention when you're looking at film of the Tigers?
Man, the quarterback is a playmaker. Sammy is a dude, and we knew that. I knew that before I even took this job, just keeping up with local talent. He does a lot for that football team, offensively and defensively. I think he's the anchor of that team, and wherever he steers is where that team will go. And, it's a lot of heart in him, just like our quarterback. There's a lot of heart in him, a lot of fight in him. He plays probably 120 snaps a game. And you see it by the end of the game, even games that I have seen in person. He's walking slowly off the football field at the end of the game just to make it off because he's given everything he had for 4 quarters. Got a defensive end, number 18, really solid football player. I think might be their best defensive lineman. Both of their running backs, 12, 6, 1, really, really speedy kids. They do their jobs. They're not going above and beyond to do anything that they're asked. You can tell that they're just, they maximize every play on making sure they do what they're supposed to do correctly. So just a couple of those kids, man, it's like I said, they're the same type of kids that's playing over 100 snaps a game, and they just continue to give their all in everything that they do. So, it's a good group to watch just because I like to watch competitive kids. And, those kids that I just mentioned off their roster, they're extremely competitive kids. So it should be a fun one. We just, we want to, at the end of it, we want to be the most competitive ones.
Well, Coach, on that note, what are the keys to the game? If the Dragons are going to go on the road and get the W, what do you guys have to do?
We got to have ball control, first and foremost. Those kids, like I said, for their side, averaging over 100 plays, we got to keep them on the field. We got to have a sense of urgency offensively, to try to create some type of fatigue. That's just, everybody knows it. Like, you start to wear down at the end of games when you start racking up those reps. So we got to move with purpose, move with a sense of urgency, control the clock. It's an option-based football team. I think they're running the best offense they could based on their personnel. It suits them, and it's always hard to do. I've been in a triple option system for a long time, whether it's playing or coaching, and it's tough. So defensively, we got to make sure we read our keys. It's a hide the ball football concept in the triple option. So we got to make sure somebody is accounted for their dive guy. Somebody is accounted for their quarterback every play. Somebody is accounted for their pitch back every play. And then we got to be disciplined enough in our eyes and not get manipulated so they can't go over the top in the pass for us because we do have our eyes in the backfield. So just controlling the clock, with a sense of tempo and urgency, and making sure defensively we read our keys and don't get lost in our discipline or our manipulation.
Excellent. Well, Coach, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. Good luck on Friday night, and we look forward to talking to you again in the future.
Absolutely. I appreciate you guys for having me. Thank you.
That was Coach Brandon Haywood, head coach of the Pepperell Dragons. We will be back to break this game down, and appreciate you guys tuning in to This Week in Northwest Georgia Football.
Shop for your next car, truck, or SUV at Riverside Auto Group. Check out riversideautogroup.com today to browse their selection or visit with them in person at Riverside Chevrolet GMC in Rome, Riverside Toyota in Rome, and the all-new Riverside GMC Cadillac in Cartersville. Locally owned and operated by the Welburn family since 1974. That's Riverside Auto Group. Visit riversideautogroup.com.
Welcome back to This Week in Northwest Georgia Football. We're glad you're with us, and it is time for our Game of the Week segment. This week's Game of the Week is going to be the Darlington Tigers hosting the Pepperell Dragons. We've got Coach Groves with us. First of all, Coach, thanks for giving us a little bit more of your time today. We appreciate you.
Shoot, yeah, glad to be here. Glad to talk about a big game this week in Northwest Georgia.
No question about that. We're going to jump into that. But first, let's talk about 3 wins in a row. Of course, the team's been getting better every week. So how do you build off the confidence that your team has right now in order to remain successful and come up with a big rivalry win this week?
Well, our team definitely does have a lot of confidence, from winning the last 3 games and the last 2 games coming from behind, being down 13 in one game and then 9 last week against Haralson County. I love the grit of our team. We talk about, the resolve and just how we have that next play mentality and even though we get down, our team understands that football is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And so, we just refocus, focus on getting our job done, offense, defense, special teams roles, and just keep the course. And it works out in our favor. And so our kids believe in that, and they'll fight to the fourth quarter, and that's proven. And so that makes me feel good going into the second region game.
Well, Coach, to follow up on that, we're going to discuss your lineage here. You're the head Tiger now, but we all know that you were a Dragon at one time. So you were a player in this rivalry. Now you are coaching against your alma mater. Talk about what this means to you to be on the coach's side of things and going up against the school you played for.
Well, I don't try to let my emotions get into it. In a game like this, if you let it, it definitely can, and you can start focusing on the things that are not controllable, really. So we just focus on the things that we can control. And so, I told our team it doesn't matter if we're playing Pepperell, it doesn't matter if we're playing Haralson County, it doesn't matter if we're playing the 2017 state championship against Warner Robins. Our process to win a game is going to be the same. We're going to do our due diligence on Saturday, on Sunday, in our film breakdown. We're going to have the same process of how we introduce the game plan to the kids. We're going to execute the process on Monday through Thursday practices, and then we're going to get ready to play the game. So that's what we've really been focused on. The opponent doesn't matter. Of course, obviously, there's motivation to win. You don't want your alma mater to come to your stadium and beat you. So, there's a little extra focus there. I'd be lying if I didn't say that. But it's just another football game, and it comes down to blocking and tackling. It's going to come down to which team wants it the most and executes the best. So hopefully that's going to be the Tigers because we're prepared and we're ready to go.
Coach Wayne Groves with us here as we talk about our game of the week. Of course, as we mentioned to you, the Darlington Tigers hosting the Pepperell Dragons. Coach, a year ago, went over the train tracks, had to play Pepperell in Lindale. But this time, you get it at Chris Hunter at the Lakeside. So from your standpoint, what does it feel like to play in front of the home crowd underneath those Friday night lights in a storied series like this?
Well, I think it's one of the best rivalries in Northwest Georgia. There's never been any good blood between Darlington and Pepperell. This game is going to be very physical. It's going to be very tough. You're going to get the best out of both teams. It's going to be fun for the fans to watch. Probably not, for me and Coach Haywood, it probably going to take a couple of years off our life, but for the fans, it's going to be great. I imagine the old Darlington alums are going to be there. The current students, the boarding students, the bleacher creatures, the fans, they'll be all there. And, they made a difference a couple weeks ago against Whitfield Academy. I thought our crowd was extremely loud, especially in the fourth quarter. I thought it rallied our boys, and I thought it made a difference. And so anytime we get a team at Lakeside, we want them at Lakeside. And so 7:30 Friday, it'll be on.
Well, Coach, we're 5 games into the season, and, Matt and I have been watching you closely, as we always do. We've watched this team grow, play physical, be on the same page. It's something that's always been a pedigree of Darlington football. Who are some of the specific guys on your team that have maybe surprised you and stepped up, or those that have been the hardest workers on your team and stepped into those leadership roles?
Well, we have so many kids that do the right things, and I brag on our kids all the time. We don't have kids that are late. We have kids that we don't have kids that skip reps. they show up and they're going to do everything we ask them to do. They're going to do it with intensity. They're going to do it with enthusiasm. And so with a 33-man roster, everybody contributes every day at practice. So we got guys that have been, starters for 3 years, guys like Sammy Konchesky and Sam Twinney and Noah Duggan and Trenton Moores and Stephen Moores. We've got guys that have started for 1 year like, Evan Parton and then Henry Ledbetter, a 2-year starter. We've had a lot of guys, Miles Twyman, Jace Donaldson. We've had a lot of guys that have played a lot of good quality football. Then you have newcomers like Lane Brasington, and you got, some young kids like Levi Duggan, Bodie Powers, that are stepping in and making plays. Stuart Grigsby, there's a ton of them. I don't want to leave anybody out because everybody's significant on our football team. They really are to our success. So, it's a great, beautiful thing when all your team is on the same page and works toward victory.
And to elaborate on that, everybody contributing, that's what makes up this Dirty 30. Talk about that Dirty 30 mentality and what that mantra and what that means to the team.
Well, we went into spring practice and we had, right at, a little over 30 guys. And so, you can look at it one or two ways. And the way our kids worked in the off season, they did their speed and agility training. They lifted their weights really hard. And we made tremendous strides there. And I said, look, guys, I would rather have you 33 that are all committed, all in, and I know you can do everything it takes for this football team to win, than have 70 kids where 20 really don't care, or would be indifferent. And so I think that's what's one thing that's special about this brotherhood. This team has come together. They know we're all we got. I would say at the beginning of the season, we were probably the only 33 that believed that, we could start winning some games. And so those kids just went to work. We didn't make excuses that we just had 33 kids or that, we're going to have to play a lot of kids both ways. They just went to work and learned football and they just keep getting better each week. So it's been a really fun group to coach.
Let's talk a little bit about the Pepperell Dragons. This team's got a lot of talent on the team, so tell us about some of the dudes here for this Pepperell team and who are some of the guys that you're really going to have to step up and fight hard against that are going to present some challenges for you, Coach.
Well, the 0-5 record, you can't look at that. And that's what I've told our kids, and they watch the film. This team has good players. They're tough kids, and they can give you some problems for sure. The quarterback, Sam Ross, I think he's an extremely talented football player. Quarterback, athlete, safety. He kind of does it all for them. He punts for them. He does about everything. But he stands out. He's a difference maker, with his legs, with his arm. He can do a lot of good things. Maddox Garcia, number 2 running back, he plays some safety as well, but he's a great athlete and he's a hard-nosed kid. Offensive line, Steven Sapp, number 79, he's about 6'2", about 300 pounds. He's an athletic kid. He's not just a big kid, but he can move as well. 71, Rodriguez is another offensive lineman that's had a lot of snaps for the Dragons that stands out. On defense, 58, Hayden Weed, and then 79, the Sapp kid. Again, they're really good D linemen up there. They can pose a problem. And then Sam Ross again in the secondary, and Jelani Adams is another young D lineman that's going to be a good ball player for them.
Excellent, Coach. Well, as we wind this conversation down, we have one final question for you, and I know that keys to the game, they apply to just about every game. But what do the Tigers have to do to get this win, defend your home field, and beat a rival in the Pepperell Dragons?
Well, number one, you got to take care of the football. That's the most important thing. You got to take care of the football. We've got to eliminate mental mistakes, and we've got to be extremely physical in this ball game. And then the last thing, we've got to try to make big plays on special teams. If we can do those things, that's kind of always been my formula. But that's what we got to do. Eliminate mental mistakes. Be physical and win the hitting game. Make big plays on special teams and take care of the football. Those are the keys for the Tigers to win this football game.
All right, that's going to wrap up our conversation with Coach Groves here for our game of the week on This Week in Northwest Georgia Football. Thank you, Coach, for your time. We appreciate you, man.
Thank you, guys.
All right, we're going to take another break. When we come back, we'll wrap up shop here, talk a little bit about the game more, and close up shop for This Week in Northwest Georgia Football. We'll be back in just moments.
Shop for your next car, truck, or SUV at Riverside Auto Group. Check out riversideautogroup.com today to browse their selection or visit with them in person at Riverside Chevrolet GMC in Rome, Riverside Toyota in Rome, and the all-new Riverside GMC Cadillac in Cartersville. Locally owned and operated by the Welburn family since 1974. That's Riverside Auto Group. Visit riversideautogroup.com.
All right, everyone, welcome back to our final segment here in This Week in Northwest Georgia Football. We just heard from the head coaches from both the Pepperell Dragons and Darlington Tigers, and who can tell you how they're preparing for this game and give you better insight than the guys who are preparing these young men to go into battle.
And the biggest takeaway there is you can throw everything out the window. It's a rivalry. It's going to be physical. It's going to be a gritty performance for both teams. It's going to be exciting. And so be there for this football game. The more people that are there, the louder they are, all those sorts of things, the more exciting it's going to be in terms of environment and atmosphere. But I don't think we're going to have any problems with that because I think people are going to show up. It's going to be a super fun place to be.
Yeah, we know the Rome Wolves are off this week. Who else is off this week?
Model is off. They've got a bye week as well as Cedartown.
So, hey, they may all be in the stands to watch this one. If I'm a fan of any of those teams and I've got the Friday night available, I'm going to be at Chris Hunter Stadium. It's going to be a 4-quarter fight. That's all I'm going to say about this game. I think it's going to be a scrap to the bitter end between two teams that don't like each other very much.
We're not picking it because we're calling it, but we're looking forward to it. And we appreciate you watching and listening to this episode of This Week in Northwest Georgia Football. We've run a little bit long today, so we're going to get out of here. But, Ian, as always, man, thank you for your time.
Yeah, always a pleasure.
It's always a pleasure to talk with you. And then, of course, for Grayson, who couldn't be with us today because of the weather situation, he'll be back with us next week for the Week 8 edition of This Week in Northwest Georgia Football. We appreciate you tuning in. We're going to get out of here and hope you have a great day, everybody. This has been the Week 7 edition of This Week in Northwest Georgia Football. See you next time.
This has been another edition of This Week in Northwest Georgia Football, brought to you by Riverside Auto Group and produced by WLAQ Sports. We appreciate you tuning in and invite you to tune in again next week. Please like, share, and subscribe.